Before you watch this episode of our City Current radio show, I want to invite you to join City Current's e-learning and online personal development platform called Growth Current. I'm Jeremy Paulk, host of the City Current radio show and CEO of City Current. Growth Current is your exclusive ticket to attend virtual events with global thought leaders, national guest speakers, and experts who can help you grow personally and professionally. It gives you access to success secrets, lessons learned, learning modules, and so much more. Being online, you can join us from anywhere in the world. Subscriptions are only $8 a month, or you can do bulk subscriptions for your team. Check out growthcurrent.com to learn more and to join us in our efforts to power the good. And now, on to the show. Welcome back to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Paulk. We're honored to be with our next guest. They are both with Trinity Community Commons. We're joined by their executive director, Nate Paulk, and Meredith DiMenna, the director of operations. So how are you two doing?
We're good. Thanks, Jeremy.
So let's dive in. Trinity Community Commons. A lot of when you talk about repurposing, revitalization, listening to the community, there's so many great themes here. But Nate, let's start on your end. Give us a little bit of context. Dive into some of the history with what we're talking about here with Trinity Community Commons.
Yeah, so in 2013, the United Methodist Church in Nashville saw a trend with a lot of their buildings. There were dwindling congregations. There were large facilities that were being underutilized. And so they picked one building on East Trinity Lane, the historic Trinity United Methodist Church. And they had the bold idea that maybe we shouldn't just be selling buildings. Maybe we should be reimagining how these spaces can be used. And so I was hired by the Tennessee Conference in the United Methodist Church in 2013 with the charge to do something new out of one of these buildings. At the time, the congregation had shrunk to maybe between 15 and 20 people. The building is a 16,000 square foot building that was only open for 2 hours a week on a Sunday morning. And so in 2013, I showed up, got the keys to a 16,000 square foot building in a neighborhood located off of East Trinity Lane in East Nashville that I had never been to before. And we began very quickly, again, like you said, like doing our best to listen to the community and to try to understand not only the history, but to understand what role a beautiful old sacred space can play in a neighborhood like it is today. And so the concept of Trinity Community Commons started long before we actually called it Trinity Community Commons. So from that time, it's been almost 8 years. We have just tried to refine our language and tried to refine our process to, again, leverage sacred space to affirm and activate the worth and potential of all people in this community.
Talk about relationships that you're building, because you're taking an asset-based approach, and I'll let you kind of describe kind of the archaeological dig side of this, but talk about your approach, but also to the relational element of building community in a community where you have those who have been there for a long time and those who really have been there for less than a year. So talk about kind of that dynamic of building relationships and taking an asset-based approach.
Yeah. So being not from this place, you know, there's a pretty prevalent, and it's been kind of a philosophy I've subscribed to, is like, how can you ever do good work if you're like not from the neighborhood, right? But I actually moved to Nashville for this position. And so instead of thinking about that as kind of a liability, that was actually a great asset, because it allowed me to come in and just be a complete student of everybody, of everything, everybody who walked in the door was a teacher to me. And I realized that people respond really well when you don't really care about talking and you just want to hear what they have to say. And so for the first couple of years, again, kind of just not only sitting in this building, but a lot of time it was like, open the door of the building and see what happens. There were a lot of members of the community that were coming, and historically with the Dickerson Pike corridor in this part of town, I mean, it's been known as the gritty part of town. And so the people in this community just seem to carry that, like, this is kind of the rough part of town. But then I would hear them say like, oh, well, you know, what used to happen here was this, this, and this. And, you know, so-and-so down the street, they used to do this. And so quickly I began to really try to change the focus, in addition to listening to some of the hard things that people were dealing with in this part of town, to begin to really understand and really ask them and invite people to think more about it. Like, wow, it sounds like though there's a lot here. And so for all 7 years, I've said it's felt, instead of more like creating something new, and that's what people love to say, like, this is new. And I'm like, no, this is so old. This is the story of uncovering the gifts of a community. And in this space, when we talk about the worth and potential of all people, a lot of places in Nashville have cool, beautiful spaces in their community. But in neighborhoods like this, we find historically, especially the last couple of years, big, beautiful spaces are just torn down or become something else that the community has no access to. And so we knew there is something really special and sacred about beautiful spaces being preserved, but not just being preserved as a museum, but then becoming accessible to those people. Maybe those people who thought they had access, but then were told, maybe historically, you aren't supposed to come to a space like this. So our model has been, in taking that information that we've learned over the years and continue to learn, is recognizing the assets and then saying, this can be a space where there is we've created a logical path of access for you to be in relationship, not only with us, but with neighbors also.
Yeah, I love it. Meredith, let's switch it over to you. Talk about, from a programmatic standpoint, how this is playing out, because you are doing a lot of things very creative to do, whether it's virtual learning and bringing the students in and working with them, but talk about how you're making it accessible and from a programmatic standpoint.
So the most important thing is just to stay true to this guiding principle of ongoing listening and allow the community to tell us what they need. I think one of the things we learned with a crisis situation is, how do you find the people who are in crisis and how do you communicate with them? And so as I was approaching, my role as far as kind of crystallizing what it is that we do and making the administration clean and efficient so that we can do what we need to do. Part of what we did was familiarize ourselves with what is the city offering to help ease the crisis, what's coming down the pike in terms of school. And, as we reviewed all those things, these themes would emerge of, okay, put myself in the position of a community member. And, I just lost my house or I just lost my job. And then I'm presented with a website that tells me to, apply for someone to help me on the computer. But, I don't have a computer, or I don't have internet, or I lost my home, or, I don't have access to those things. So in each case, we kind of imagine ourselves in that situation, or we reach out to our already pretty broad coalition and circle of community members and say, what are you hearing? What are people really needing? So leading up to the beginning of school, as parents ourselves, we knew that this virtual school was going to be really, really challenging for everyone, but particularly for working families that are on a budget that has no wiggle room. So we looked around at what the solutions were for the people that do have the resources to put into it. And we saw these solutions popping up like, virtual school camp that's happening at your dance class or gymnastics. And we thought, well, we have 16,000 square feet, and maybe we can offer a camp where a safe place, if you have two parents working and you just need to know your kid is in front of their computer. And then why don't we add to it with some qualified and knowledgeable adults, background checked, who are ready to help with technical problems, who are there to help the teachers interface with the students. And we were amazed to see that, with a few phone calls, we identified families right away that needed this service. We identified community members who were ready to staff this and appropriately qualified to staff this. And we found community members who were ready to support it. So it was a proof of concept for us in terms of believing that all the resources are there. You just need to put yourself in the shoes of your community members and then ask around. And the other piece was just to be borrowing our methods and our procedures from the highest quality offerings that we could find. So one of the things we really wanted to stay true to was, what are they doing at the top schools, that the ones that have been able to stay open? How are they staying open safely? So it was easy for us to explain, well, why can't school be open? Well, because they can't have 28 students in a small room with one teacher and remain 6 feet apart. You can't ask one teacher to teach lessons and make sure everyone has their mask on. Those are not things that a public school can do, but some smaller schools can. So we tried to, really pull all the best information that we had and to pool our community resources to fill a need that emerged organically from the community.
Give us an idea of a couple of other different things that you all are doing or put together. I know that some come from the community, like, hey, here's something that I would like to share with others. And then it's, your ideas as well. So talk about some of the other programs and different offerings.
Yeah, we historically, and in some of it, we still are kind of stuck in this, like, well, before COVID-19, this is what we did. And now, we've run a weekly Tuesday night community meal for, it changed, the date changes every time I say it, but at least 5 years. Every Tuesday night, it's a partnership with the Nashville Food Project, which is an amazing nonprofit. For 5 years, we've had a sit down white tablecloth, flowers on the table meal with anybody who shows up. And so in a neighborhood, when you're talking about innovation, in a neighborhood that is used to, if you come to a church and you're hungry, you're going to get a pretty terrible meal put on in a to-go box, and they're going to send you away. We were like, wait, let's make a meal that we want to come to. And so we designed this beautiful sit-down meal. We did that for at least 5 years. Now that COVID-19 is going, we have transitioned that to a to-go style meal where those same community members can come and get food for themselves. Neighbors can come and get plates of delicious, healthy, handmade food and take it to other neighbors and share. So food distribution has always kind of been a thing that we want to be a part of. And more than just calories, nourishment that comes along with fellowshipping in some way around that meal and how that food can build community is really what we're passionate about. We, over the course of the summer, through another one of our partners named Project Transformation, had a virtual literacy program for summer camp kids. We have another partner, Backyard Leadership Team, who provides incredible mentorship for students. We've got another anchor partner that I think you just interviewed not too long ago, named Transformation Life Center, who is doing incredible work with young adults. And so we, again, kind of with this concept of paths of access, we can create those paths of access, but what we really like to do is hear about a need or a desire of the local community and then go out and curate the best of the best to possibly meet that need. So we don't know anything about cooking, but the Nashville Food Project does. So we should just partner with them and do what we do best, which is to kind of see this big picture and leverage this sacred space in the way that we feel like the opportunity has presented itself for us to do that really well. So we want to stay in that lane and go out and find the best of the best organizations and people to respond and to create those paths of access.
Which leads me to the next question of how do we help? And I think that's part of it, is saying, hey, we can be a part of that. And so teaming up is one piece of this, but talk about how we can help.
Well, you can visit our website at trinitycommunitycommons.org. And through the website, you can join our mailing list where you'll be able to hear about our programs and events as soon as we pick those back up again. But we also do have many volunteer opportunities, and we even have some virtual volunteer opportunities. And we found that, it can be very rewarding and life affirming in a time like this to provide some type of peace to another community member. People who have volunteered in our virtual school program have just been so enriched by the experience and been moved by that experience. So we have several different ways that community members can engage. Then we will be starting a number of fundraising initiatives. The first one is to renovate our beautiful 16,000 square foot space to really proceed with community gathering in a post-COVID world. We don't know exactly how long this will last, but we know that dealing with something like this is not necessarily going to go away even when this is over. So, we're very interested to meet more members of the real estate community who can advise us on, what does the building need to have to be able to stay open and provide safety to our staff members and community members when they're in the building. So we'll be launching a pretty exciting fundraising initiative and have some really exciting plans for the building in the future. And then the virtual school support program, we also feel like was really quite a gift born of crisis, because we realized that by removing at-risk students from the regular classroom and putting them in a virtual school classroom where they're being supported in a way that even the regular school environment can't really do for students who have barriers. You know, we have students in the room who are food insecure or who don't have secure housing, and that's a tremendous barrier to learning. But if they're surrounded by staff that's aware of those things and kind of has the time and the space to address them within the context of the school day, this is really a gift, because the Metro school system made a huge investment in a virtual school platform, and they allowed a lot of these families to cross the digital divide for the first time by handing out these computers and hotspots. So we thought, you know, if we're able to get the support of the community to continue this program even beyond COVID, wouldn't it be great for Metro if there were these layers of support for the challenged students, so that, number one, the teachers doesn't fall to them. You know, you have to teach literacy, and then you also have to figure out what's going on with this student in their home. But then we're not starting a school. You know, the school is still in the computer. We can just support the student in all the ways that they need to be supported to access that school. So we're going to be launching an initiative to continue that program even beyond the end of this year.
That's awesome. Make sure everyone visit the website trinitycommunitycommons.org. So trinitycommunitycommons.org. Meredith, Nate, thank you for all you and your team do. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Jeremy.